Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Bizarre Podcast Dogs Must Die. My name is Grant. You can call him Chip. And, as promised, we are joined by a very special guest. Please introduce yourself as you would like to be introduced.
Hi, I'm Woolie.
Pause for applause. So, Woolie, why? I'm sure there are more people than not who know exactly what that name means, but just for the record, just to get it on officially, where are you from? What are you into? And most of all, the number one question I ask all our guests: what got you into JoJo's Bizarre podcast into JoJo's Bizarre Adventure in the first place? What does your JoJo journey look like?
Okay, well, my name is Woolie. From the channel WoolieVersus on YouTube. Also from the Castle Super Beast podcast. I used to be from Let's Play group Super Best Friends Play. Part of what I do is I do Let's Plays. I talk a lot about fighting games and play a lot about fighting games, and I talk a lot about JoJo, and I'm here on this JoJo cast to talk about the most JoJo moment in all of JoJo, which is
love to be an enabler.
Yeah. That's been a big one, and I guess the Let's Play history aside, which you can check out what I do over at WoolieVersus on YouTube and on Twitch, as well as a clip channel, WoolieVersus the Algorithm, for anyone who doesn't have time. Yeah, my JoJo journey is one where I saw the Satoshi Kon OVAs from 1993 a long time ago, and I thought they were the coolest fucking things ever. I could tell that the story just was being rushed and that I had no idea what was happening. I could tell that I was being dropped off in the middle of this journey, but somewhere between like the sniper water stand battle in the desert and the depiction of like Dio's time stop powers in Cairo, in that version of it, I kind of was like, this is one of the most awesome anime battle type sequences I've ever seen. And it's not quite just Dragon Balling it, where two characters are standing yelling, getting their big number up, and then shooting a beam. It felt like you had to kind of outsmart your opponent and figure out the details of like what they were using, how it worked, and the rules kept changing, and seeing that, and then seeing as well, just I still recommend people go back and check out the original JoJo OVAs from the 93, because like the way the time stop worked then was there was no big flash and an awesome sound effect explosion. Things just stopped being where they were and continued wherever they were, if you were outside of Dio's world. And it was the scariest shit. It was the most awesome looking thing, and they used it to do some real fun things, like when he gets that cab driver and has him run all the way back into the car, and he runs out of the car and he winds up in the car again. Like, that is a giant looping infinite background that the cab driver runs through to wind up in the car again. And that was just the brilliance of like Satoshi Kon doing that and stuff. And at the time it was like, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Like it was wild. So it left an impression. And then the internet eventually I started catching early scanslations of like, oh, if you ever wanted to know what happened before all of that, and this was before the prequels too came out, like there's these scans, and there's this guy called Veggie Hater online who was doing early scanslations before the of the different parts straight from Japan, and I was just catching those scanslations of each part as I could in bits and chunks. And it was like, again, sometimes they would start halfway through a part and finish before the end of the part, but it was just a wild sequence of stand battles, and it was amazing. It made no sense, and I just tuned in expecting it to not make sense, but I would read whatever chapters I could find and whatever was uploaded. And that all kind of just led me to, find out eventually when David Production was like, okay, we're going to do it. If we're going to do it justice this time, we're going to start for real from the jump. And I saw that first season and I was like, okay, it's happening. And I basically became the evangelist, so to speak, for JoJo to all my friends, and I was like, everybody shut up, watch this, we're gonna watch it together, we're going. And we all like gathered in the same room, and I kind of forced him through it, and it was great.
that experience of just like starting from the middle like that is so underrated. You know, the experience of finding a movie that you just fall in love with, like channel surfing, and you're like 2/3 the way through, but you pick it up anyway. Or even things that actively work for that, like, I don't know, Buckaroo Banzai, for one.
I think it helps a lot that it says right on the can, this is going to be some bizarre shit, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair, true.
And every time we get to the next part and the stands get weirder and crazier and more completely batshit, like, I get to just tell my wife, I'm like, well, look, they told you it's gonna get weird. And by part 4, punch ghosts are not weird anymore. So what else do we got? And so, yeah, we have to start getting into the concept of weather and like the desire to fight and see the shining muscles of the person in front of you. Like, we got to find new ways to get weird, because you gotta keep it fresh, I suppose. And whatever was weird to Araki at the time was no longer weird. So here we are digging up the ground for the memories of a plane crash, like
It is nice that the world got desensitized to dog violence, and that just sort of disappeared for quite a while now.
Yeah.
God. Step 1, Dio jumps out of the cart. What's that? A dog? Ugh! Like, immediately established. That, dogs must, just great name for a podcast, because really, like, if anything, it's all about the puppy test.
The first pitch was just dog violence, just 2 words. Just call the podcast dog violence.
I never call it Dogs Must Die when I like say, hey, the updates are out, or a new update is out on Twitter, just because sometimes when I would type in Dogs Must Die, the tweet would get flagged like almost immediately by a bot. So now I just say our JoJo's Bizarre Adventure recap podcast.
It's crazy, because you wonder, like, is Araki just really anti-pet, or is he so pro-pet that this is the best way to establish how evil a son of a bitch is?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the latter, because that's more optimistic. But man, those dogs get it.
It's been a little bit since we did our episode on it, and since I last read it, but yeah, Araki's book on, best practices for making manga, I don't think it ever actually says anything about, like, he's got so many different, like, rules and like paths to follow for, like, to more likely reach success in selling your manga, but he never gets to, like, shorthand for showing how bad a bad guy is. Kick a dog. I don't think it explicitly.
I think it's somewhere. It's one thing that makes me wish this book had an index, because I have it in my hand, but I don't want to put the brakes on the whole show just to find. Like, I can't even recall which chapter that would be in. So
yeah.
But more recently, of course, the agenda for today is to talk about Stone Ocean Part 6, the anime adaptation. I'm sure we'll talk about the manga original. And I'm also sure, like we were saying before starting the podcast proper, it's probably going to mostly be about those last 2 episodes. Because, wow, there's a lot to talk about there. But before we get there, one point I would like to bring up is how much I enjoy the fact that Pucci is a priest, and how much of his perspective and actions, I think, are really colored by that. Like, the fact that he talks in parables. Like, this is how he explains the world. He's just going straight to the gospel, and, like, not quite as clear as Jesus's, I gotta say. But, like, he gets there eventually.
He is my favorite villain of this subset, so far. And I been waiting a decade to be able to tell people why, and it's finally here, and I'm like, he's this amazing devotee of, like, everything pure and everything that he believes in. It's not about it's that moment, it's a couple of moments, but it's really him just being like, I have to remind myself, even though I got this sick new stand, it's not about power. It's about a greater cause, you know? It's about attaining heaven. No matter what I'm doing, no matter what I'm saying, it doesn't matter. It's all towards this better end. And like, it's not, and like, you can look at any other of the villains and see how the power hunger, you know, can take over. But with him, it's a much more pure ideal.
And of course, that heaven, what heaven is like when everyone knows their place, which is like, it's very pre-Reformation thinking.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to consider that, like, that is kind of, I know that, like, there's entire books about Dio's philosophy. And, you know, I mean, while he was standing around in Egypt biting women's blood and sucking it and tossing bodies, like, he was also, like, being a philosopher of sorts. And I you know, one of them being like, those goddamn Joestars, I can't stop losing to them. Destiny sucks. I hate it. Right? The song Sono Chino Sadame is talking about the bloodline destiny. I hate that song. What can I do to get past that? And it's like, well, you have to kind of accept it, but accepting it doesn't mean that you can't. You can accept it, but if you know about it first, then you can, you know, like, create a stalemate of sorts, and you can live with dignity. And that's kind of like Pucci carrying that forward, is like, yeah, okay, I can see Salty Dio getting to this point, you know?
I also like the idea of that entire idea, what he believes heaven to be, can potentially, like, kind of play into his backstory of, like, all that shit he did to protect his sister, killing her in the end, and it just being like, well, if that was fate, guess I'm resigned to that, and I don't gotta feel bad about it anymore. That was the correct thing to do.
It's not his fault. A world ruled by fate is a world with no, like, fault. No one is in trouble. It's not anyone's failing. It's just the way it is, right?
Yeah. And that's why we have to be asked whether or not we believe in gravity, right? Because that's you can't control it. You're getting pulled together whether you like it or not, you know?
Yeah, he gets his stand. He, like, crosses the threshold when his sister dies, but he starts asking the questions out loud, which Dio overhears, like, grieving the loss of his brother Dominic, after all. Like, it's all about one sibling or the other that sent him here.
Yeah. It is, like, there's that layer to it as well, where it's like, it's not just about this hot vampire showing up in church suddenly and you know, very lovingly handing him an arrow and piecing out. It's also about, like, I'm obsessed with fate as well, you know, and this hot vampire keeps talking about fate, so I'm gonna listen. In bed, lovingly, hanging out.
We're just reading on the same bed. That's what guys do.
That's what guys do. That's what bros do, man.
It's head to toe. It's head to toe. It's not gay. It's head to toe. But I think maybe the most Christian thing about Dio, or excuse me, there's nothing Christian about Dio. The most Christian thing about Pucci is that, like, it is revealed that he knew all along what his heaven would be. He understood the nature of heaven, but still, going back to, like, the first 2/3, he did not know the path. He has all these questions about what this plan means, and that's a very relatable story of faith, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. Not understanding these wild ass instructions. Like, okay, we're 36 prisoners, I guess, man. I don't know. Like, if you say so, you know, and just like, yeah, the all the steps you're following, the steps to reproduce, you're like, you have to just walk on blind faith, you know? It is a really good point there.
Steps that even include having to consume and then synthesize a pagan idol. Like, come on.
Yep.
He's very Catholic.
Going even further into that is just, like, the last third of the series is just him, like, actively suffering and feeling awful and going, like, oh, this is all part of the plan, though. Like, I go through all this suffering, and then it's, you know.
I think too, like, it's pretty instrumental that, like, a lot of that happened in his early days, you know, like when he was, like, not a full father in priesthood yet. He has that moment where, like, you know, the first confessional, which then you know, erupts in his life, and then, later it's like he's, when he encounters Dio, he's like, okay, I won't tell the father about you. And he's already reading a book that's kind of deviant. So he's primed to already be one who strays from the path kind of thing. So the idea that it's like, okay, there's God and all that stuff I've been reading about, but what if heaven through stands though, it's like, yeah, he has all the makings of someone who's walked along far enough, but he's not all the way in with years of being an actual, full father to like be like, no, God's Bible doesn't say that, like he can walk away if a vampire shows up and kind of gets real close to his face.
So to go to the other side of the coin, we got to talk about Jolene, and something I realized while preparing for this month's cinematic event. Jolene is John Wick. Jolene is John Wick.
Okay.
Like the thing that I find really interesting about John Wick is that he is obviously top tier dude at killing people. But no matter how much people talk about how good he is, we are shown he's not alone in that tier. There's plenty of people who can kill people just as good as John Wick, but they just aren't as dedicated. They aren't as determined. They don't see it all the way through. That is exactly how I see Jolene Cujo.
I've never seen any of the John Wick movies yet.
I've seen the first one. I can't speak to 2 or 3.
Okay.
But
that's when these other people start really showing up. He gets fought almost to a standstill by Common of all people. Like he's not unbreakable.
I mean, I guess I could say that John Wick and Jolene are out to get the people who abuse the dogs. So
it's true.
There's
that.
That's
true.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got to get what's coming.
If John Wick's second dog was named Emporio, it would be a perfect parallel. Everybody would just be Danny.
Jolene's fantastic, and I mean, just an awesome, first female protagonist to join the lineup. Carries over the burning spirit of the bloodline, and it's kind of interesting too because I feel like. In this story about the bloodlines and like we see this lineage of awesome Joestars, like you get to contrast it like the 3 fail sons of Dio, and really Giorno before that. Giorno's cool, but I feel like he could have been there was some more Dio juice in there that could have been squeezed out that I feel like he didn't fully capitalize on. And
he's so ethereal while Jolene is so grounded, right? So there's something visceral, there's something very physical about her, and that Giorno just doesn't have, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's and that quality really shines through with her, and you feel it. And I think all right, like, WoolieVersus is a cool character, but the other 2 are particularly just awful. And I kind of just, it's just kind of interesting to see, like, the contrast of, like, oh, that's what your kids are up to? Well, check out mine,
Yeah. Yeah.
Jotaro Cujo with a bumper sticker that says, my kid could beat up your honor student.
But she's in jail, don't worry about it. Yeah.
Just thinking about the generations, though, it's fun to compare the teams, right? Like the Stardust Crusaders versus the Green Dolphin crew, right? Like back in Egypt times, we have this tactical team of equals where everybody's taking a shot at Dio, and then our Jolene and co is very much that, right? And everybody knows they're Jolene's backup, right? They are carrying her to the big fight so she can do the big punching.
Yeah.
Like, imagine somebody who is spending their entire life being the best basketball player on every team they've ever been on, and then their job, and everyone knows their job, is just feeding LeBron.
Right.
That's it.
I mean, it's like, yeah, but like, and in this case, it's like, she's not even the one with the birthmark star, like, on her own. Like, others can have it too, but you're still, you got to pass the rock, and it's not your time. I mean, I guess there's something to be said about the part where, like, because they're the best and they're cool, but they're also like not great people. You know, at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, you guys are kind of scumbags. That there's a reason why a lot of you guys are here in jail, and like, in even if you don't remember it, you probably should be.
Look, just because I did all those murders doesn't mean I should be accused of murder.
God, and the sandbagging of that is wonderful. Every time Anna Sui's like, no, but I love her though, and like Jotaro practically turns to the camera and is like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, it's great. Yeah, and then I guess there's Emporio, who kind of fills in the role of Smokey Koichi, the kid sidekick, but is pretty useful, and then, as I guess we're going to discuss, crucial, right?
Yeah.
Because he, his sin was being born in a prison. He didn't do anything, so like he gets to, I guess, earn it the most.
Yeah, let's talk about Emporio's surprising role delivering the final blow, because like, does this break one of Araki's rules he wrote for himself? I'm gonna find the quote on page 57 of Manga in Theory and Practice: The Craft of Creating Manga. Fundamentally, characters who cannot fight without the aid of others can't be considered heroes. When an audience sees someone dragging others into a fight, they can't help but think, hey, don't rely on others, do it yourself. Even when allies are present, when it comes to the fight, heroes have no one else to rely upon. Otherwise, they don't have what it takes to be heroes. How do we see this passage in light of what actually happened?
That's amazing, because not only does that contradict that last little bit with Emporio, it also explains why so many fights are the hero fighting the enemy and then everyone else is standing around doing commentary. Like, you can get in there and 2-on-1 them if you want, but nah, I'm gonna play by play.
Honestly, please attack the weird old man with the dragon. Come on.
Speedwagon, even just all the way back to the start. It's like, no, they're fighting. It's my job to stand by and call, color commentary on what's going on.
Yeah.
Emporio definitely. I guess the idea is like he has to inherit the stand in order to, fight on his own, but he still is the one that's choosing the abilities that defeat Pucci. So to some degree, it's his still victory.
Jolene is dead, but she is fighting through him. And Emporio basically says as much. Her and Weather Report both.
Yeah. And, well, is she dead? Oh, boy. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we can... Whenever you want to broach this, like, there's a...
I feel like there's like a flashing button with like the radioactive logo on it.
Oh.
And it's something I want to talk about. It's just like for time management's sake, I want to keep putting it on.
Yeah. Like with Emporio, it does kind of feel like in that book, if I remember correctly, there's a couple different points where, Araki's putting out all these different kind of like rules that he follows and suggests following as well. But then very frequently, like anytime he states a new rule like that, I do believe he always says like, but again, there's always places where you can break this rule and it'll work.
And to go to like I mean, I read the whole paragraph. I think it is more indicting with just like the final sentences, but the beginning of that passage is talking about like, if the ending had been Emporio saying, no, Jolene, I'll finish this, and lashing her to a dolphin,
right,
and then Emporio just wins right there, that would suck, actually. That would suck. I think I would hate that.
And if you then go and look at the further context, which, Araki sort of described in the liner notes about like, well, he kind of gave some clues as to what he was thinking with this ending. It feels as if the one that we got was one where, these people who had been through these awful things could get some sort of peace in their souls by having them not carry the burden of like everything in the previous universe, like they got to live relatively less traumatized lives as a result of the switch, but there's a lot to be said about that. I mean, God, like this is just, yeah, I remember like as we are approaching part 6, like we're approaching Stone Ocean and you know, way back from when Stardust Crusaders was happening and I'm just like, oh man, everyone's gonna get really depressed come Stone Ocean and they just don't know it yet, you know?
Yeah.
And it's really interesting.
All these people doing the roundabout meme, they don't know. They don't know.
They don't know. How can they possibly know? Anyone? Oh, you only know if you've read ahead. And it's interesting though, because you know, as I was watching it, like with my wife, like she came away from a lot of that not feeling anywhere near as bad as I did when I read it, because it happened so quickly and it's so much denser in animated form that you're just kind of left with the brief little highlights of these moments, whereas when you're reading it and you're stopping to go over every detail of the page as everything's resetting and you're just thinking about everything being lost, you have time before you turn the page to the next one and process like everything I care about is gone, you know, like it was a lot more painful to read it page by page than get blasted through it, you know, in animation. It is kind of different.
I think especially something that we didn't really talk about last episode, seeing the ending and these people's like the rebirth of this new world in light of Foo Fighters' death and how they make the final point that like experience is what matters and experience is what was lost for everyone, but like the memories contained in a very sad child.
and that's why it has to be so bittersweet, because, you know, Emporio, who sees like, well, Foline and Fotaro in, you know, like what fans are what we call like the Pucci verse, right?
The Pucci verse.
Yeah, like he doesn't have that reaction. He goes, oh, there's those people that look like my friends, but that's not them. And then when he sees them for real in the Irene verse, you know, like he just breaks down uncontrollably, because it's like he knows that's them, but he also is having that echo. It's like that echo of what FF said. If you can bring me back, but without the memories, it's not me. But at least they, you know, their souls are kind of there. So it's a truly bittersweet thing, you know. And I think
in this new, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, and I guess I think that's what Araki really wanted to convey, you know. And I think that the animation of it, like they definitely understood that, because, you know, they start playing roundabout, and then you get a new ending to the entire sequence of all 6 parts of JoJo. You know, like they kind of like acknowledge, like, yes, this really is like meant to be a bittersweet ending to what you know, and it's the promise of where Sonochino Sadame started. The first thing you see is Jolene going backwards 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you go with a part 1, you know, Phantom Blood. So they kind of were like, we promise to animate at least up to this part. You know?
In this new world, is Loco Barocco alive? Is Charlotte alive?
I'm going to say yes. I feel from the very, very brief glimpse you get, all these people are like new versions of themselves, essentially, but are ending up in kind of similar locations, similar personalities and stuff. He may not work at the prison, but he's somewhere in Florida.
I think maybe they switch. I think there's a talking alligator that has a fucked up little man puppet.
I think I'm going to say that, yeah, it depends which verse, right? In the Pucci verse, definitely. He made it through and, you know, got dropped naked into his role and was like, what's going on? And then... but
he's still naked to this day.
Yeah. And in the Irene verse, you know, yeah, maybe like you said, he switched souls with something nearby, and, you know, maybe the puppet's real and he's not, you know. God, that whole double universe switch is, I mean, did you get it as you saw it, or did it take like further reading? Like, how was your reads on that the first time you encountered it?
For me, it even before I had like ever seen or read anything beyond part 3 years ago, this thing that happens right at the end was the one thing I knew about part 6 the whole time. And so I was like ready for it. And so like I got it right away.
Okay.
You got it a little pre-digested.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
had expectations holding your hand.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, if you don't get what happened, Pucci just straight up tells you, at least on the first one, and then you've got that basis to go from when it comes time for round 2. But yeah, I mean, it seemed very, very clear to me. Maybe I am too in tune with vague new age hippie ideas of what the cycle of life and how it makes a great big capital O with giraffes in it. But
Okay. I think for me it was a strange journey, because the first time I read it, there's lots of different interpretations of the end of Stone Ocean, but I think they kind of crystallized it popularly.
I've been reading the comments. I know there's a lot of interpretations.
But there's two, I feel like, ideas that kind of crystallize, right? There's a kind of a nihilist point of view, and then there's an optimist point of view to things, is what I would like to call it. And I feel like when I first read it, I had the nihilist point of view. And this was reading the continuity all through each part. The idea that Pucci attains heaven, and we watch everyone we love die, and you're there and you're like, okay, but they're Jojo dead, right? We're doing and then their bodies start decomposing, and you're like, oh God, no, they're actually really dead. Oh fuck. Okay,
we can't just buy a submarine and then find them later.
Yeah. Or like we can't just fast forward so that like that cool infinity spiral that Jolene's doing with her body is fine. Next scene, don't worry about it. She healed. It's okay. She got better. It's a thing where you're like, no, they're actually dead, right? And so you're like, all right, the whole acceleration point, it reaches just, the singularity, right? And Emporio and all life float up into space and get dropped back into this Pucci verse, and you kind of have a moment where you're like, okay, no matter what happens, we have now moved forward in time, and there's no fixing that. Everything that was going to happen in the world that I know and cared about of all the JoJos is gone now, right? And that kind of is like, oh, okay, this kind of hurts, but all right, where are we going, And you see in this new Pucci verse, things are not quite right. He says that the souls don't carry over of the people that he killed, and only the ones that are permitted to come through can then face their fate, and thus humanity will achieve heaven, but only if I get to complete this loop, right? And so then Emporio beats him, he fails, he can't complete the loop, and then we get dropped into the Irene verse, and then the thought is kind of like, okay, are we looking at a parallel sidestepped universe that has to come after his reset, or are we in fact returning backwards to the previous one, but reality is changing itself to be a different version of what it was because he no longer exists, And so that discussion is ultimately like the optimist point of view is that, no, we're not saying goodbye to everyone. We're actually returning to them. They just lived different lives, and now her name's Irene. Or the nihilist point of view is like, no, they did die, but this new version of them is just kind of like a new reincarnation that comes later, and spiritually it's okay, but it's not quite the same,
I mean, there is, like I mentioned, these also go up on YouTube, and so we have a lively comment section that I do enjoy, and there are people that have a lot of takes on the exact nature of what this Irene verse is, what it means, whether it is victory at all, whether it sits well with people. Either just because is it a happy ending or not? Is it an ending that is dramatically satisfying, independent of that or not? And like to the people who hate this ending, I cannot prove you wrong. I cannot prove wrong the people who like it for reasons other than mine. Like, this is what I really appreciate about this ending. This is a show that loves to explain what's happening at all times. This is a show that loves to, I mean, maybe your read on some of these people is that they're unreliable narrators, but boy, are they narrating all of the time. And so to have this ending have something that is just weighty with meaning and also ambiguity. Like, we may never run out of things to talk about, and I love that, and I appreciate it, and it's one of the things that I really do love about this ending. Also, it's why Resurrections is my favorite Matrix movie of all four. Yes, it's true.
Okay.
I feel like regardless how you feel about it, like, this is the ending is you're not gonna forget that one, you know. Like, having a more you beat him, all right, style thing. Like in, you know, the other parts that for the most part I feel like it'd be easier to forget what happened there exactly, other than just like, well, they beat him in the end. That's one of the reasons why, like, when I first learned about that thing, you know, years and years ago, I was just like, kind of makes me not want to check out the rest of it, but I mean, it's still pretty good. Okay. And then, like, by the time I, you know, was reaching part 6 and, like, kind of knew about it just vaguely, but not entirely the mechanics or what it really meant, and then seeing it for real and reading it and stuff, I was just like, oh, okay. I have gone from really not liking the idea of this to, like, kind of liking it now. I mean, it also helps there's still more after, even if it's different guys.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely.
Is there tension in the home?
It's fine.
Okay. Sorry. To provide context, Chip's lovely fiance is not very positive on the ending of Stone Ocean.
Okay. Yeah. It really does help to know that there is more, and not only that, in my opinion, the best is yet to come. And so when I was talking about earlier, I had that initial nihilist view on things, that, like, it isn't the same. The things we love are gone. The things we cared about, the characters, the journey we took, no longer matters. It's been wiped out. Pucci won, and this new version of it just kind of comes in to give us a little bit of a feel good. Yeah, that felt a lot more real when I didn't know what was coming and where we were going to go, right? But I think now, especially like Steel Ball Run is my favorite part. It's easily just, it's so good, and and it feels as if, I mean, I'm not going to go into any detail, but just there's an element of it that's kind of like, hey, you might be feeling a little bit melancholy after what just happened. We know. Come, let's celebrate everything that makes Jojo Jojo. And it's a really
We're gonna kill so many dogs.
You can't even begin to imagine how many dogs are gonna get it. They just really, like, it does come back and it celebrates everything Jojo was in a way that is, like, so good. So, like, knowing that really cheers me up. But then to this part, really, what helped me, I think, over time accept it, and especially, like, turning to the more optimist point of view, was that Araki, when he wrote the liner notes later for the manga, and then for the full Jojonium books, right, he gave some extra context we didn't have when it first came out as to what he was thinking, and, like, that little insight pushes things, tips the scale a little bit in a way where you're like, oh, I kind of get where he was coming from. He basically describes two things. Like, one thing is he says when he was drawing this part, he felt the existence of what he calls gravity, right? And so the whole bit where do you believe in gravity? That's what Pucci says to them. That's the first thing Dio says to him, why he's drawn towards that whole idea with fate and such. with Araki, the way he's using gravity is it's that same way where like characters are drawn together, things happen. But more importantly, when you're 6 parts into this story that's been taking place, the momentum carries itself. The characters, you place them on the scene and they carry themselves. He barely feels like he has to write it sometimes because the actions are just going to happen because he knows what these people would do. And he said it even resulted in some things that he drew were not what he wanted to happen in the first place, right? But you can't escape it because he knows that this is what the right thing these characters should be doing is. So he kind of felt that building up, right? And the momentum of like, oh, I can barely even control the story at this point because everything happening is a result of that which came before. I'm fighting against the dominoes if I want to. He's fighting against his own dominoes if he wants to change the path, you know? And he said he wants everyone to kind of think about that when they're reading the final volumes of Stone Ocean. The second thing he wrote in the liner notes for Jojonium was that he felt that his creativity reached its highest point when it came to Made in Heaven and everything that was happening at that point. And he felt very satisfied with what he had created. But something a lot of creators will tell you is that a feeling of satisfaction is the scariest and worst thing in the world because where do you go from there?
Yeah.
Right.
And he felt like he reached the peak of what his capabilities allowed him to. And so the fear that comes with, I have a stand that just reset the universe. You can't go past that, right? Like, where do we go from here? And on top of that, the characters are writing themselves and everything just rolls forward. He's like, he needed to get away from the momentum that he was like, he was stuck following the fate of the characters he wrote 20, 30 years ago, you know? And I think that's the idea of like, okay, we actually have to say goodbye to this world and I have to stop this flow. And the bit where he says, well, where do you go from here? If you turn back to the Italians, their Renaissance period was born from turning back to the Greeks and Roman Empire, and that's where the Renaissance came from. So he's like, I went back to my roots to try and start again, you know? And it's like, okay, this idea of where Jojo was, if he got that straight ending of we beat him, what's next? You know, he was at that point where like we can't just follow through. So that made a lot more sense to me, you know, and I feel more optimistic about it, knowing and understanding that it's like, right, this carries forward the spirits of the characters. And I mean, and even the fact that his first manga was Gorgeous Irene, you know, he gets to bookend that part where Irene comes back around as well. So yeah, I've been talking a while. Sorry.
No.
That's good. It's good.
I was just going to say that makes a lot of sense as a perspective, especially when you pay attention to how everything in this home stretch is at maximum scale. Like Tokyo is destroyed. We have globally effective stands now. The biggest on-screen death toll number is like the Sea Moon auto accident, but that probably doesn't even touch how many people got snailified and then eaten by beetles.
Yeah, the little secret world of like, oh, something weird happened in Morio. What was it? I don't know. Anyway, like you can't go back to that. Like Mickey Mouse just jumped off of that brochure. Like everywhere around, like you can't undo that, you know? Yeah.
One thing I really enjoyed in Made in Heaven is like it's the final demystification of Jotaro Kujo. Like before we can put this whole world to rest, we have to take this guy off of his pedestal, which is so much fun to me as a noted loving hater of Jotaro Kujo.
Bad dad.
Because what does he do? He shows up with his theme blaring and is useless. The last words he hears are like, quote, I knew dad would save me, and he doesn't save her. And he didn't save her in the memory that's being recounted at that time. It's a 1-2 punch. But also, because he gets his face exploded in half, that means that in Pucci's heaven, there is no Joestar blood whatsoever, and he still loses. Which is, again, one of my favorite things to track. It is the final refutation of hero eugenics in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Yes.
It is about connections. It is not about midichlorians. That's not how it works.
It's also just it's satisfying, using Emporio to show that, and also simultaneously having Emporio be like the fusion of motivations of multiple different characters all at once there. Like, he's even saying it, but, it's the stand of Weather Report, getting revenge. It's Emporio himself getting revenge for his mom being killed and shit like that. And I think that's just very satisfying.
Yeah, I feel like just Jotaro being the bad dad is like, it's just par for the course with your shonen protagonist. You're like, of course, the greater the hero, the worse he is at like being there, because he's got an adventure. And if there's no adventure, then he's got to go stare at some dolphins, like he just and of course the other idea too as well, it's just that like a big part of I think Araki has talked about how he visited a prison, and like when he was preparing for this, and like he at the time he wrote Gorgeous Irene. He wanted to have a female protagonist and pitch that as a full series, but he thought that it wouldn't catch on, and the world kind of wasn't ready for it. And then when 6 came around, he's like, yeah, I think I can go back and have a female protagonist now. And he was right. Like it was it was time for that. To then kind of have her come in and just be like, Daddy, save me, would have been counterproductive and bad. And it would have been like, oh, so she's the JoJo with daddy issues, but they manifest in her needing to be rescued. Well, that's kind of, what's the point of that? So the idea,
I mean, it goes back to that quote I read earlier. Yeah. You can't have your protagonist ask to be saved. Exactly. You just can't do it.
Exactly. And so Araki goes on to say that he thinks Jolene is the toughest of the JoJos. He said like when he visited prison and like he kind of saw what it was like, he's like I would break in 2 days. Like I couldn't handle it. So like for her to come through that, being innocent on top of that, and still just like finding a way to thrive and like make it through. And then every step along the way, there's those moments of like, okay, how determined is she? She's light herself on fire and let it burn to beat you. Determined,
to go from Bruno Bucciarati and then try to squeeze out someone even more determined than that,
right?
Yeah,
someone who fought on after death.
Yeah. And credit to Weather as well, right? Like, he's gonna dodge those spikes. No, he's not. Like little moments like that of just like their will shining forward. It really does a lot to kind of, make sure she comes in on her own and is, she's a Joestar, but she's not going to be carried, right? And I feel like I got similar energy with that with Josuke back in 4 as well, where like, yeah, we've got time stop over here. Yeah, it's busted, but at the end of the day, it's going to be this one cheeky delinquent boy hiding behind a broken down house with blood and glass, throwing it, like that's how we're going to save the day. It's not going to come down to the busted time stop power. So yeah, Jotaro kind of comes in, does his bit, and he's there. He's effective enough, but he's not the end all be all,
Yeah. Something I've been seeing on Twitter on and off, especially after Part 6 ended on Netflix. I've seen some people posting like these images drawing parallels between Jonathan Joestar and Jolene, and that she exhibits some of the same like beliefs and behaviors as him, even if she doesn't say it and do it the exact same way, which is
they're both no fap for life.
For different reasons, exactly.
For very different reasons.
Jonathan doesn't know what it is.
He does not know it's an option.
and Jolene is just doing it because she's in a bet. Yeah.
Yeah. A bet with herself.
I mean, She clearly really wants to. She's so envious of the snails,
Yeah, I mean, how else do you get to being jealous of snails,
Yeah. And yeah, anyway, she also had just like bad romance luck, of course, so even when she finally like resigns to being like, yeah, okay, you know what, Anna, sure, if it'll lend a little bit of hope to the sitch, we can get hitched,
Like-
you know? Like,
I mean, we have a lot of fun joking that Jolene is oblivious, but you don't take a nap with your head on someone's chest like that unless you're into them.
right.
That is the clearest sign anyone can send.
At the same time, if you get someone who you like napping on you, don't take the opportunity to sneak a ring onto their finger while they're sleeping, you weirdo.
Little freak.
God.
Yeah. It's interesting because, you know, when Anasui first showed up in that first panel of the manga, it was a girl. And it's I'm kind of curious. I'm always like, yeah, like how would the story have played out if that were the case? You know, like would Jolene kind of just like become a bisexual disaster, or like, you know, like what direction would it take? But I think Araki said like eventually that he's like, I wanted to kind of create a character that challenged beauty standards, so that's what the switch was about.
Anasui can present any way he wants. We saw the chocolate trick. Like,
Yeah.
his body can be any body he wants it to be at any time. You know, whatever.
I mean, the most important thing is if you cheat on him, he'll kill you. So,
Yeah, there is
like,
that. There is that.
You know, like, just, yeah.
He's a great guy otherwise. Look. Going off into stupid, just like, ooh, I really like this character. They remind me of this other character. They never interact. How would they? I feel like Anasui is just and I think we've said this in a previous episode too. Anasui just feels like a further extension of trying to make a character like Rohan, where it's just like, how far can we make a good guy character who's just the most awful human being and still have the audience come away liking him in a way?
Yeah.
Which just leads me to, how would Anasui and Rohan interact?
Man, he still made his deadlines.
He did.
Unbelievable.
Good for him.
I mean, we know Anasui is only watching Western cartoons. He has no interest in the work of Rohan Kashibe.
His stand would be useless against him, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Rohan would be like, I refuse, and Anasui would be like, well, I refuse first. And they would just stand there yelling no at each other. The comparison points between Jolene and Jonathan, though, are pretty great in that, like, you know, obviously the intro squares them up to be that, right? And
right.
Like, you get her running up the staircase the same way that he did, and then in the final version of that OP, like, just fully embracing the this is now the legacy of Dio versus Jonathan, except in the Descendants, you know, like,
yeah.
Originally with the show, I was always like hyped with the new intros that would drop, and I was worried. I was like, are we gonna get the sound effects one? Are we gonna get the variations? And, you know, like, because the Netflix like binge drop kind of like killed some of the momentum, but I'm really glad we got that final version of just like heavens falling down with, like, you know, literally made it
thing and a half.
Yeah.
I mean, a big parallel between the two of them is they're the dead ones.
Yeah. They're very
both
of them.
I had to go back to Manga in Theory and Practice, page 102. The bit where he's talking about why Jonathan had to die, and how that is an exception to the rule of like an always a positive arc, right? Do you remember the graphs? I remember the graphs. So when a story's themes include that of passing a torch, the death or replacement of a protagonist is acceptable. I might even suggest that's what makes those stories masterpieces. When I killed Jonathan in part 1, some people said, "Can you do that? What happens to the series now?"
Yes.
If you gamble by taking on that extreme negative, you must do so with the understanding of the rule of positives and negatives, and you must be looking ahead to how you will convert it into being a positive. Which, in Stone Ocean's case, goes right back to, Woolie, the points you were bringing up from those commentaries, and those elements of Steel Ball Run, right? It sounds like Araki was thinking of those in the exact same way, where he finishes that paragraph by saying, "In Jojo, Jonathan's grandson Joseph was the positive that enabled me to take that risk."
Yeah, Araki clearly, and this, I mean, one of my favorite things about Jojo is the fact that, yeah, he's not afraid to end a story arc and let time move forward and then pick it back up, you know. And he, with the whole bloodline bit, also is willing to let like hope carry on to the future, you know? So even if Jonathan doesn't see it through, like the torch is gonna be passed and picked up. And so that's the idea, I guess, where if Araki has that point of view of things, is he's willing to let go, right? That's gonna make an ending like that where he's like, yeah, it's okay, they're spiritually all there, you know? And we're like, no, but we're more literal, and we're like, oh, but what about the you know? And it's like, but we're saying goodbye, and he's like, no, it's okay, you know? Like, just look at Emporio, he gets it, he feels it. And I think that willingness to do that, to say goodbye to your protagonist and move on to the next, is like, it just, I prefer that so much to another type of shonen series that goes on for a decade, and the characters, like, they get like 5 years older, or maybe we time skip, but literally nothing ever changes or happens, really, you know?
Yeah.
It's so much more freeing to just be like, well, that's the end of this person's arc, and now we move on, you know? Like, that worked so much in the overall series' favor.
Something you said a moment ago really twigged for me why I think that final scene is effective, and it's that Emporio is there, right? If we saw all of these brand new but very familiar people going about their hitchhiking lives, and Emporio wasn't there as witness, and even wasn't having every human emotion at once.
Yeah.
Like, if he had a clear read, or there was no witness with the memory, with the experience that we have behind him, it would just be the worst. It would suck so bad.
Yeah.
You need a speedwagon. You need someone to fill the speedwagon role.
You do, right? You need that little, just, he's your catalyst. You're living vicariously through him because he gets it. And I also just remembered too, as we were talking about you know, Jotaro and the role he fills and such, like, in the final ending sequence, like, you get the time stop moment, right? And then it's the acceleration, and then Jotaro shows up and he's about to punch, but then he stops and it all pulls away from him, and it's like, no, this is not his punch to land, you know? There's that little moment right before the Heavens Falling Down remix starts playing, and then you get like the finale version where, like, yeah, like, he's, you know, it's like, it's almost like if he landed it, then it's okay, daddy's gonna do the work, it'll be fine. But it's like, no. He misses. He's just like, whoa, what? And then you get Jolene breaking off of the legacy of the heroes, and then she goes to land that final punch, you know?
I need to hear him actually say the words, "Daddy's gonna do the work." I would immediately die.
God.
So, of course, I have to talk about the nature of fate through JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I have to. Is Pucci's world heaven for those who lack the resolve, or for another reason don't accept their fate? Is this hell for all of the strivers in the world? Are heaven and hell the same thing?
I think if I think it, like, it kind of is, you know, it creates a situation where anyone who wants to break free of fate is forced to acknowledge it, and it's artificial, of course. It's you know, created by his stand, but the fact that he's even like, oh, let me die and it'll just take place automatically, it's just let's complete the loop, right? Because it can't work until he does. You know, he's just looking at it like, it'll be okay no matter what. We can all learn to live with and accept fate as long as we already know. But yeah, I would think that would absolutely be hell for people who want to break against that, you know? It means no spontaneity. It creates a lack of luster to life.
Just imagine being an artist and knowing every work you will ever create before you do.
Yeah, nightmare.
Or like, I mean, this goes back in time. So like all the great explorers of history know what they're going to see before they get there.
Yeah, but I won't be so salty when I lose to the Joestars, though.
Christmas is going to suck. I know what's in that present.
Oh, man.
Yeah. It is interesting because it's like, you know, the best villains are the ones whose points of view you can understand and are arguably right. Right? Pucci's dedication notwithstanding, that world sucks, man. That, you know, like...
But back to the priesthood thing, it is Catholic doctrine that Christ knew everything that was going to happen to himself, and everyone going to heaven is becoming as Christ-like as he can make them.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. No, and there's a dignity and poise to accepting that you're headed for the gallows, right? Like, yes, that's kind of the way he's sort of looking at it. Plus, on top of that, the infinite loop means it's all going to happen again anyways, and a bit odd.
We're going to get our little robot buddies.
I mean, a bit like odd that, like, the Christian is also pushing a massive reincarnation system, right?
Once you spend your time in Pucci's heaven, you get to go to God's heaven. It's like the waiting room.
I know that this is not the level that Araki planned it or thought about it at, but it is kind of interesting if you try to, like, imagine too, like, well, like, Dio he's had a lot of time to study stands, right? And, like, the idea that he studied them to the point of, like, figuring out that I can create an artificial stand-based heaven by, like, basically bending the rules of what types of stands are going to pop out of who and what, and, like, how did he figure these steps out, you know? Like, what was the process that led him to understand that, like, yeah, like, all of these things are going to result in whatever. He didn't know it was going to be a weird green baby, but whatever it is, you're going to need to say these words. And, you know,
when Whole Horse snuck up on him in his Egyptian like library, that's why he was like, fine, go, I'm really busy, this is very important.
But like of the 14 words, I think what was it, like, I think the last two were like everlasting peace and secret emperor or something to that effect. Maybe I'm getting that 13th one wrong, but like, I felt like it was almost like, oh, of those words, the implication is that, like, we're going to create this artificial heaven and there will be one person that's a stand user like behind it all, but no one will know and it'll be okay, you know? But it is odd because if that world came true and Pucci then successfully ended the loop and then the world reset again after that, would that world have a Dio that was allowed to see his fate and then things would go better for him, you know?
Yeah, I've kind of always wondered how that heaven was meant to apply to Dio or not. For worshiping Dio so much.
I think Dio is one of the people that, if everything came to pass as Pucci wanted it, would hate it the most.
Yeah.
Because so much of it seems to be on, like, Dio would like this on the assumption that Dio becomes emperor of all humanity. No, he gets punched in the foot so hard his face explodes. As soon as he knows that's how it's going to go down, he would be in constant despair.
Yeah. Would he even do Dio shit anymore if he knew all that?
He would have to.
It's true. He would have to.
He'd go to plant the kiss on Erina, and then he'd see the mud that she's going to stick in her mouth afterwards and just be like, "Aww."
Oh.
like, why even bother?
Damn it. Oh.
Yeah. No, it is an interesting thought that, like, yeah, through reincarnation, he might be able to experience already the thing he was looking for, you know? But I don't know. I don't know what that would result in necessarily, you know?
But at the same time, we're taking so much of what Pucci says on faith about fate. And it, like, if everything is absolutely lockstep the way he says, then fate itself was fated to die. Or is Pucci just wrong?
Well,
because, yeah, I mean, if it works more like, say, the Rolling Stone fight, go back one part, like,
yes.
All these people with strong wills, all these heroes, can like do tiny little work in the margins that eventually adds up, and, like, Emporio is the very last one to just push over all the dominoes that Jolene set up for him, that cascades into this huge difference being made.
Yeah, no, you're super right on that. Sleeping Slaves in part 5 is like a early look at the fact that like you really cannot escape fate no matter what.
But you can do little things along the way. You can you can postpone your death a couple days, and maybe there's something that you do under fate's nose in the meantime.
Yeah, well, fate should have created a stand that can breathe without oxygen, idiot. Take this. Get like when he went like Pucci got it, man.
I do love how much Emporio reading books all the time actually mattered and paid off for the final blow. I read a cool science book. I'm gonna play a random a factoid I read from it. You're dead.
Yeah, like kid with no knowledge of the outside world, like just dropping Wikipedia on you to win the stand fight. It's great, and then immediately afterwards he's like, what is that? Is that a bus stop? Oh, I've heard of those things. Like, it's just
cool.
Like you lost to that,
I heard the legends.
Of course, too, in the Irene verse, right, you get that like, okay, all right, you know what? We kind of won, so Anarchis, you do get a little bit of redemption, sort of, because,
represented by a giant hat.
You kind of, you got a better life, and maybe, who knows, maybe in this world, like, he didn't get cheated on because Jolene met him earlier, so he didn't have to be a huge piece of shit. And things are all right,
He didn't do alleged, very factual, and also admitted murders. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something else I do enjoy about, like, that I think grounds this ending and makes it complicated and ambiguous and not an altogether happy ending is that prison's still there. That prison's still there.
Oh, yeah.
And I hope Gwess is still inside that prison, just living the best life anyone's ever lived in a prison. But I want her inside, because that's more fun to me.
I mean, it's a prison without the arrow involved, right? So
yeah.
It's just a normal, awful prison in Florida. Dear God. But things would just go the way they kind of usually would. I kind of wonder if Jolene becomes Irene. She's no longer a Jojo. Does that on its own just spare her an adventure? Like, does she just get sidetracked or like shifted out of the spotlight because, don't worry, you don't have the titular name, you'll be okay.
She has a half brother named Jordan, and he is fucked up.
Going back to the last bits of that fight as well, like, it is kind of fun how like dolphins come into play.
Yeah,
like literally, it's like it's the obviously, like, dad's a marine biologist, Green Dolphin Street prison, like the symbol is always there, and so it's like, the final little thing that's gonna drag us to safety is this weird naked kid riding a dolphin into space. I like that little bit.
Emporio's been through some shit, man. He's been in space twice.
Weather Report always wanted to go to space.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Is he the JoJo character that's been in space the most? Because technically Cars has been in it the longest, but he's only been in space once. And it's still in that, yeah.
I mean, if we're not getting into the wildness of the novel canon.
Oh my God, yeah.
Do you know about the 36 cars on Mars?
I'm just barely, yes.
Barely. It's what I just said. There's and it's all based on the George Joestar novels of insanity. So I think I'm willing to give that to him. I'll say Cars has only got a space count of 1, so fair. There's also the alien from Part 4 who might have been to space many times.
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah,
Mikitaka comes from space, allegedly.
He comes from space so far away that Araki forgot that he already used the stand name, Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yes.
I think overall, I just reflecting on this part, like, I really, really like it, and I really like how coming off of 5 again, which, you know, there was some stuff where I kind of was just like, man, Bruno's way cooler. The story should have been about him, you know, and Diavolo was unfortunately not much, to be honest. I kind of felt Diavolo was a really weak villain. It just felt really nice to see overall, like, a setting that is different, you know, like is a very unique, fun setting that is, you know, like you're trapped in an all-girls prison, and then you get again the female protagonist. You get the Jolene is an awesome, like, you know, she carries on the legacy spot on and then some. A lot of the JoJos kind of have it's like the odd part JoJos are like the stoics, and the even parts are the wild cards, you know.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, there is something to that pattern, huh?
Yeah, blue Oni, red Oni, as they call it, right? Like, and so she comes in, and she's the daughter of a Stoic, so she too is one, but like she still got that little wild streak in her. And it felt nice that, like, you know, such a strong new protagonist kind of stepped in, you know, over the last part, and strong antagonist as well. We talked about the strength of Pucci. Just, yeah, I felt like part 6 really was firing on all cylinders, and I just love, like, how much of that, you know, felt like it did feel like a nice way for the JoJo we know to end. I just really, really, really hate the terrible Dio sons, and I'm going to bring it up one more time because, man, Dio's so cool and they suck, and then I think, wasn't there a panel?
I think they suck in fun ways, you know? I'm trying to... They suck in ways that reflect on Dio interestingly.
Perhaps so, right? Maybe there are aspects of his personality, you know, that we're seeing manifest. Wasn't there something about, like, I want to say there was like a paragraph in the manga that was like, Giorno was busy and didn't, like, show up or something like that. Like, it's like, I forget what it was, but it's just like, yeah, like Giorno was
I think I might have seen that circulating as, like, yeah, an author's note in an interview, maybe, or like in the back matter of a volume release, maybe. Something like that.
Yeah, it's just, you know, it's one of those little bits where it's just like, yeah, okay, so, you know, the hand wave on that. And then the last little bit too is like, there's another really great meme, which is every JoJo villain and then a picture of a TV remote control, and just like every villain points to a button. So, like, the pause button is Dio, the rewind button is Kira, right? The fast forward button is Diavolo, exactly, right? And I think, like, was this like skip? I'm trying to think. Like, I forget. I think it was like yes, chapter skip or something is like for, you know, Made in Heaven, and and there's another button that pertains to an antagonist we haven't talked about yet from a future part.
Yeah,
you know, and so it's just kind of like, oh yeah, we've completed the remote control sequence of just like every button here applies to a JoJo antagonist, you know.
That just reminds me of a different recap, like with a guest we did for part 5, where it was brought up that the power of Diavolo's stand was just the remote from the movie Click. I think I think that's what that was.
That was even that episode's title. Yes.
Oh yes, right.
I can't remember if it was Sylvie or Morgan, but one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think at some point, like, there's one of the podcasts I was doing was I was describing, like, Epitaph is just like having a Twitch chat for real life.
My favorite button on my remote is the one that says turn into squirrel.
Yeah. Make hands squirrel.
I hate when I accidentally sit on that one on the couch, though.
I was eating.
God bless Cars. He turned his hand into a squirrel, and then, like, he also licked his lips when he felt the sunlight. Like, he knew how hot he got. Yeah, no, part 6 is just wonderful. It's been a journey, and coming back around now, especially just hearing Araki's thoughts and sort of seeing the more optimist point of view on things has it's made me have a new appreciation for it, and seeing it animated as well, and the end of this journey, and then the credits that they went into that are just saying goodbye to the whole part. I was like, yeah, no, seeing it animated has helped me like appreciate this a lot more, in its tone and its pacing. Even though it's kind of fast, I just really, really hope that we don't get a binge drop of the episodes ever again, because that really killed the momentum. I like it week to week.
Same.
I am really excited every Soletta Sunday for people reacting to Witch from Mercury, and if that existed for JoJo, like, okay, I would have to like keep myself from getting spoiled for the purposes of this show, but it would be so much fun. It would be so much better.
Yeah.
Every part before was so awesome, just anticipating what's coming next and getting excited. Currently I have that Attack on Titan, same thing. You're just like, it's so funny speculating and talking about what's going to happen and stuff. So I'm like, I feel like a lot of that went away because this dropped and it was so awesome when we first saw it. And shout outs Kira Buckland, she got the role of a lifetime finally. And then it just kind of went away, The binge drop just, it doesn't go hand in hand with the excitement that is JoJo season. I don't know what they're gonna do when it comes to animating horses, and I hope they figure it out. But
I just started reading part 7 for the first time like a week or two ago, and like within a couple chapters, like, how are they gonna animate this?
We don't know.
It's gonna film a bunch of horses and rotoscope it.
So
it
this
might
is
somehow be cheaper.
It is a serious, major problem that, like, again, the JoJo fans have been wondering about for a decade now. And like every time we see something like like you're like, oh look, that stand is in 3D. Oh, are they going to use 3D horses? Is this going to be the way? Like, are they getting more comfortable with integrating it? They've done it with the intros. Like, maybe that's the way, because you can't force animators to draw that by hand,
No.
And I'm like, I'll take a world where we just draw the bottom of the horse, draw the top of the horse, no legs, and just South Park it. Just like up and down, like, it's fine.
Just 2 frames.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
But I hope we get it episodically, whatever we get.
Me too.
Well, because of the evaporation of our backlog, we took the opportunity to ask you, the listeners, to ask us, the people who make the show, some questions, and we got a lot. We got a lot of questions, and we're not going to get to all of them because of that volume. But I do want to thank everybody who sent them in, and we'll see how many we can get to before we have to move on. So I want to start with Devesh, who asks, along with several other people, what do you think Anasui's favorite Disney movie is? I mean, it's obviously Old Yeller, right? He loves when they shoot that dog.
Oh, yeah. He's down for that. I was like, do you see, like, Wall-E get disassembled at any point? Like, maybe he'll, like...
he gets real fucked up. I mean, I was also going to say Skeleton Dance, because he loves to see the constituent parts of human beings.
There is that.
I feel like he would really identify with Disney villains. I was trying to figure out, okay, which one, like, fits his vibe? What would he... Maybe. Yeah.
She's out for those dogs, man.
She's out for dogs. She loves to skin living creatures. Yeah.
I'm going to say my official answer is, I don't know, but Weather Report really hates Song of the South.
Yeah. It's the one memory he still has.
Not a fan. Not a fan of that one.
Yeah.
Don't take him to
Intense
Splash
hatred.
Mountain.
Oof.
For some reason,
you know what? It's getting better, buddy.
For some reason, there's a copy.
We're doing it for you.
For some reason, there's a copy of that movie in the library in Green Dolphin, and
it's the Japanese Laserdisc.
really bad things happen if that laser disc gets put in your brain by White Snake.
Oh, no.
Throw that in the garbage.
Oh, okay, moving on. So, Claritic writes in, hello, oh boy, wow, wave of nostalgia answering a question from Claritic on a podcast. Says that they have a theory that the reason JoJo video games are mostly fighting games is because of the Capcom arcade fighter, but that doesn't really fit anything past Stardust Crusaders as well as it does fit Stardust Crusaders, where two guys punch each other with their ghosts. So the question is, what would your ideal form of a JoJo video game be like? In general, part specific, etc.
I forget the name of this game. It came out, I think it was like an indie game. It wasn't like some bigger title or anything. But there was a game that was essentially a fighter where it was like a kind of turn-based thing where you would have a certain amount of time in your turn to grab any joint on like the skeleton of the model of your fighter. Toribash, yes. Toribash, but stands. So it's entirely just doing very minute like planning of movement and motions and like whatever abilities your particular stand has. And then at the end, just like Toribash, you can see the whole fight play out in real time.
Let me take that excellent answer and go one step further. Toribash inspired a more recent game that came out this year called Yomi Hustle. Your only move is hustle, I guess technically. And it is a fighting game that's turn-based, and like Toribash, you click on each option that your fighter has, and then they click on theirs, and then you play them both at the same time, and then until a couple seconds play out, and then you stop time, and then resume picking your actions again. The end result is a giant, awesome stick figure battle that plays out like in a big anime sequence kind of way. And when you think about JoJo and how like the step planning, I got to do this to beat that, right?
Yeah.
I'm falling down into a spike pit with fire, and I got to use the wall, and now there's there's 8 things going on, and you got to think all these steps ahead. It really lends itself to that because in each turn you see the ghost of what's about to happen, and you can select your opponent's actions to predict they're probably going to pick this, so I'll do that instead. And you have to think like a JoJo protagonist to overcome the odds. So you had a really great answer with Toribash, and this game, Yomi Hustle, is like the next step of that for sure.
There's no way to do like real Galaxy Brain JoJo fights in real time. It has to be something like that, or some type of strategy game, something where you can actually plan out moves.
Yeah, where space is involved. I feel like, the CyberConnect games really just kind of, they were great fan service, but not great in terms of the gameplay elements, with Eyes of Heaven and All-Star Battle. The Seventh Stand User was this fan RPG that was kind of cool, played like Dragon Quest, did a lot, and was a fun thing where you had to do a personality test to determine what kind of stand you'd get.
Yes.
But yeah, I agree in that you'd need something that had a larger, like, outsmarting the opponent kind of aspect to it that I don't think any of them really had. Also, there was a JoJo Battle Royale game that came out in arcades called The Last Survivor, and I don't know how that went, but I'm still mad at it because missed opportunity to call the game The Last Stand.
Oh, shit. Yeah, that's a better name.
Terrible.
If I were to make a JoJo's Bizarre video game, I would have it set in Morio. It would be like a Part 4 sequel, and there would be no stand fights, or like it would not be about stand fights. It would play out like a PC 98 dating game where you were just living your life and trying to like choose between your priorities hour by hour. Just living life in the weirdest city in the world. And like stand fights would happen, but it would be entirely predetermined. You just watch a fun little cutscene of something very silly happening. Right. But what the game's really about is it's going to school and going to okay, which cafe? Do you have enough money to get the good sandwich? Or
we go to
that's
Tonio's?
What the game's really about. Yes.
Yeah. That's great. That'd be a lot of fun. And I mean, revisiting Morio is always great, obviously. So there's the new spin-off manga now, Crazy Diamond's Demonic Heartbreak, where they go back to Morio. Yeah, it's awesome that you have this JoJo fictional town where you can just use it as a setting. And I totally agree. I would love to just hang out there.
Zane writes in, hi Zane, thank you, and says, hi there, love the show, and you guys too. I was wondering, when it came to Jotaro's parenting style, or lack thereof, did it ever cross your mind how if his dad was always busy with jazz and never around for his kid, influenced his parenting style? Even though we never see Grandpa Cujo, Jotaro doesn't seem to hold any ill will to his dad for not being present, and that could be why he thought being an absentee father was fine.
I mean, maybe, or like, it's okay if they're not around as long as they're in a coma and you're fighting to save their life. That's good enough, right? That's his idea of a parent.
His idea of a parent is a working, specialized professional who travels around the world doing his job. That's what a dad is to him. Mm-hmm. So, there might be something to this.
Yeah, and we really never got much insight into like what kind of person her mom was, but there's a photo. But it's like, who, like, a lot of ladies loved Jotaro over the years, but, like, who's the person that he actually settles on? Is it the one who's not going to bother him while he stares at marine life?
Like, it's just so hard to fathom Jotaro got that far. How did he do that? How?
The only person we've seen in this entire series that makes sense to me is Shinobu. If the widow who does not know she's a widow wound up with him, I would believe it. She wants a strong, silent man. I found one. Yeah,
I mean, again, not a ton of like wholesome relationship examples because I'm going off of Koichi and God, that absolutely insane woman. I forgot her name right now, but
Yukiko.
Just I mean, look, I think at this point though, like, as long as no one's pulling a Joseph, right? Like,
yeah,
zany old Joseph, there he is. Oh, what a goofball with his clackers and his Tommy gun, and he's an old man.
His infidelity.
Yep, and oh no,
like it keeps happening.
Yeah, God, old man Joseph, you cheated on everybody.
Like, I just find a random rock in the ground, lift it up, and there's another one of his kids there. They're all over the place.
The like perspective of this question does make sense to me though, because I mean, who was his kid that he raised? Holly. And she is just as doting and suffocating as he is when he comes to visit and does all that to like a 40-year-old woman, which is a choice. But
yeah, not a lot of great examples in the series here. Not a ton.
No. Yeah.
A Meat writes in to ask, what jobs do you think the new WoolieVersus versions of the main characters have? And then puts forward an answer to their own question. I'd like to think Irene is putting all her determination and drive into making cool threads, including that sweater she gave Emporio. Yeah. And that Hermes' counterpart finally got to put all that snail knowledge into practice by having a nice vegetable garden that grows stuff for her family's restaurant.
Aw.
Nice. Anarchis is definitely an engineer. Because you can safely
he knows
take
how
apart.
the parts go together.
Yeah,
how they work. Yeah.
Out of curiosity, he pulled apart the electric pole and all that stuff, right? So just keep him away from people, and we're good.
I think in that new universe, Emporio will grow up to follow the same route as either Speedwagon or Smokey.
Politics.
Yeah, politics or big time like oil magnet style thing, whatever the analog will be for that universe. And that time period.
What if he becomes... I mean, this might be a world without a Speedwagon Foundation, but if they need a chief researcher, I know a little guy who loves to read.
Oh, God, yeah.
I mean, I could see him being like a coach for the Cubs. Not a player.
Dress for the job you want. That's what they say.
Yeah, yeah. Not the fighter, but, he's got the info and he loves him.
Yet another thing in that library of his while he was in prison is just records of all of the games over the past, however many years. And it helps. It's working knowledge.
Yep. And
I think whatever Irene does for work, it's what Jolene dreamed of doing as a child, but then dissuaded herself from, like, oh no, that's silly. That's kid stuff. I got to do something serious. Just an office job somewhere probably, which sucks.
Wes is still delivering juice.
Got to deliver juice for the juice man. A-Meat also has a bonus question. Would Jolene have won if she hadn't vowed to never jerk off? The final battle was during the new moon, which by her calculation is the least horny time.
If only she was not master of her domain. Boy.
If her wrists were a little more limbered up, maybe.
Couldn't go with a balls deep pun on that. Yeah, I think, I don't know. If you go by the rules of Raging Bull, it's like you gotta save it before the fight, right? You can't let it out. Otherwise, your fighting spirit is gone. So if you save it up, then you'll have more.
Maybe it was the only thing keeping her alive. Like, every time she ascends to another, like, plateau of like, fight mastery and determination, that's the reason.
Yeah, the frustration, right? Just really pent up. That's absolutely adding to the battle capacity. Like, that should be on the commercial break when they read the stand powers out. You just gotta have, like, sexual frustration. Just, like, A, S.
Caleb writes in with a question with a bit of preamble, but I'm going to cut to the chase. Quote, but basically, FF was a better friend/partner to Jolene than Anasui was, and I wish some of that had rubbed off on him when they died. Like, he wanted Jolene to make him into a better person, but all he really needed to do was be more like FF.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question mark in that, but what do we think about this point? Let's talk about this for a moment.
I agree. FF became absolutely better, I mean, as a lot of characters do in their final moments, but Anasui is a jerk, and, like, we don't quite know why. Well, we know that he falls in love with Jolene because of her determination, but, like, it's a love at first sight thing with him, and so it's easily readable as shallow. And the fact that he obsesses over it later doesn't do anything to, like, persuade you that this is, like, pure, quote unquote, Like, it still feels sketchy the whole way through. It's just like, well, the situation sucks, so we're going to go with it, and we really need Diver down. But, like, I think it does absolutely, like, leave you, like sketched out the whole time. FF is a great friend. I do like that when the moment of motivation is kind of coming through at the end of the weather report, the heavy weather fight, like, you do see that FF gets named, right, as one of the motivating factors. Like, we we came this far, and all the people that we lost along the way, including FF. Like, so there was an acknowledgement that the creature that he called her, the it, was still worthy of acknowledgement, even if it was, like, after dying.
I feel like, because there are a couple different scenes throughout the anime that are anime original things, and, like, several times in the past, especially in Stardust Crusaders, those new scenes they add in are frequently, like, smaller character moments to make just certain events that happen a little more fulfilling, a little more meaningful for that character. For instance, when they had Hermes learn about FF's death and pour some water out the window in honor of her. It feels like that could have been a new anime original thing they could have done, was, have that reflect more on Anasui in the end, if they had, the time and budget for more than 38 episodes.
I think they really wanted they wanted Anasui to not be. They wanted him to be a conflicted character. They wanted you to feel weird about this guy, and, like, the reactions to him are, like, clearly, like, intended, where it's just like, yeah, that you're a psycho. You've killed people. You're in love with her, and you're here for those reasons, and ultimately we kind of need you on the team. But like, I think the human, like, there could have been more humanizing efforts, if that's what Araki wanted. But I think they were like deliberately left kind of where they were. He gets a bit of a bone towards the end of the series, but like with Heavy Weather, right? You kind of see like, oh, there's a reason why Weather Report is this upset. He's got really good reasons to hate everybody, and still not okay. But
yeah, that's a different flashing button with the radioactive sign on.
yeah. I think they left Anasui in this like morally ambiguous place deliberately. You're not supposed to be like fully on board by the end.
I just noticed. I was curious. Nobody sent in a question about Weather Report. Like, nobody wants to talk about that.
Damn. That sucks.
I mean, none of us brought it up earlier either.
I got a question about Weather Report.
Sure, yeah.
When you see how he uses his powers to evaporate blood, freeze it into an icicle, and then beat the blind priest while bleeding out with no legs, how garbage is Storm's usage of her powers in Marvel?
She doesn't even turn anyone into snails. Right? She's not unlocked the true potential.
Once upon a time, there was a real tornado that picked up a bunch of frogs and dropped them from the sky. Technically, that was a weather phenomenon. Therefore, my power lets me rain frog. Like, come on! So much more creative usage of, like, weather control. I remember just like that fight versus Pucci was what made me go, oh yeah, like fuck Storm's abilities. Like she's not being anywhere near as creative as she could be. And I like Storm.
Andy writes in to talk about, how part 6 ends by making a brand new world and setting aside the old one, and says, I would have loved a Josuke Giorno Jolene arc or something with a grown up Shizuka, the invisible baby. Is there anything you or your guest would like to see explored more before the timeline reset? Tell me your fanfic.
I mean, I really enjoyed that Rohan nod. That was very satisfying. Yeah, I think my fanfic would have been to bring Giorno, have a cut to Giorno for some part where that whole Dio's kids thing is going down, and like use that opportunity to fix him and them, and or spell out what Dio's kids' legacy is supposed to be. Like maybe we see what kind of person he became when he was the boss of Passione for many years. Maybe there's something to be said about the whole Rolling Stones, Sleeping Slaves, Fate thing. Maybe there's you don't want to have too much reliance on the past with that stuff, because it's not about him or his story, but we did revisit a bunch of the other Dio kids, so I feel like there should be something to that, even if it was a brief moment during that part. Maybe even a scene of like Pucci like wanting to talk, like reaching out to him and him not it not working, him not wanting to reach out to Giorno because he was he's like, no, this isn't going to work for the plan. I don't know, but a little bit of something there to kind of just fix him and them and kind of like make that part of the story a little more satisfying.
My answer is I would want to see almost essentially like a mini series that is a side thing that goes. That threads through parts 2 through 6 that is just various eras of the Speedwagon Foundation. I want to see the behind the scenes of the Speedwagon Foundation, and I want to see I want one of the big things to cap it off near the end just be Polnareff reporting in on what happened at the end of part 5, and he's like, I'm a turtle now. What? We're sending Jotaro over to confirm that you're a turtle now. Ah, shit, he's a turtle.
Yeah, just a mockumentary, like the Industrial Revolution. You know, the Speedwagon Foundation, just going through the history in black and white till modern day. Yeah, yeah, that'd be wonderful.
One question does try to play along with the bit of the Speedwagon Foundation benefiting heavily from Operation Paperclip. And
Yeah.
so thank you to G for that note.
No.
But what I would want, and I'm on record wanting this since this character was introduced, is a story where Shizuka, the invisible baby, becomes the new Jojo. And like, again, shout out to the Shizuka Joestar project for being a large group of fan collaborators making just that sort of thing happen. But in my idea, she's 13 years old, and the first chapter is Joseph's funeral. And the whole family having to react to like, you're not related to us anymore in kind of a real way. And she's just this like really gung-ho. She wants her turn. She wants a bizarre adventure, like sort of Scrappy-Doo-ish, and like doing her own birthmark and magic marker. And everyone else is like, you fucking idiot kid. You don't want this.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one kid that like he treated right too. Like, yeah, that could be interesting
And,
for
like,
sure.
Josuke would definitely enjoy her, but enjoy her as a novelty, as a toy, and not a person. And she doesn't realize she's being like belittled in that way.
Yeah.
Also, she renames her stand Potty Mouth because it's just better music than Octoon Baby. And as a non-infant has figured out that it's not invisibility, it's light manipulation. So she can be invisible, but also reflective, or go Vanta black, or refract light.
Sure.
So there's all sorts of weird, like setting people on fire with like sun lensing is probably the first thing she does.
That's great. That'd be a lot of fun. And that actually does remind me too that like something part 6 related that like something I would have wanted, but it already exists, is the fan comic that is Josuke taking care of baby Jolene. Right? Like there's tons of fan art of that, and someone made a great little fan comic of a full chapter of it. And then I want to say the game Eyes of Heaven has baby Jolene as well show up for like a brief little moment in the story mode. So like, yeah, just Jotaro dropping off, the kids to get taken care of by another stand user is a lot of fun.
Okay, I'm looking at the clock, and again, we got so many questions, and I did really enjoy reading these. Thank you to everybody who sent them in, but I think I'm gonna end this segment there, and instead say, once again, thank you very much for coming on the show, Woolie. This was a joy. What are you currently up to? Where do you want to send people? It's plug time. Let's go.
Sure. Yeah, this was a blast. Thank you for giving me an excuse to come on and just rant about this goddamn franchise that I'm going to be following for the rest of my life. Man, God. I suppose 10 years from now we'll be talking about part 9. You know what I mean? Like
part 9 in animation.
Yeah, whatever.
Or part 9 ending if it's like part 8.
God,
yeah.
Right? But we're gonna get there slowly but surely. So far it's off to a great start. But if you'd like to check out more of what I do, come check out WoolieVersus on YouTube. It's where the episodes come out every day. We've also got the Twitch channel where you can watch me record the Let's Plays live. I've got...
I believe you just finished Hi-Fi Rush. Is that correct?
Yep, I just finished Hi-Fi Rush. It is the game of the year in January. Incredible. As a fan of character action games and, the Devil May Cry's and Bayonetta style games, that thing was just a out of left field miracle. It was so good. We also are going through the Mass Effect trilogy right now. We're on Mass Effect 3. I'm playing it for the first time. Me and my co-host Reggie are going through that. So yeah, this is our fresh eyes on this much beloved franchise as we're experiencing it. We just started, since we finished Hi-Fi Rush, we just started Final Fantasy IX as well. So that's another like first time thing. Yeah, and so those are the Let's Plays going on. We also have clips of our best moments and just enhanced bits and things over on a side channel called WoolieVersus the algorithm. This is me trying to figure out how to beat YouTube's dumb algorithm with content. So check that out as well. And then I've got a podcast every week called Castle Super Beast. Where myself and Pat Stares At, we just we shoot the shit on whatever's going on. So that's what I'm up to. WoolieVersus, and thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, of course.
Super fun. Of course. I did a lot of outro plugs on last week's best of.
Yeah.
So go listen to that. It's all true. This show is going to go on hiatus for a while as we figure out what we want it to become next, but it will become something. Something very much like Irene gets to live a happy life because of the actions of Jolene. Because of Bizarre Podcast Dogs Must Die, something will come in its place in a new and exciting form until I assume it's going to happen, until there is more animated JoJo's Bizarre Adventure to talk about with everybody.
Yeah.
Bizarre Podcast, Horses Must Ride.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, I want to pitch Bizarre Podcast Space Puppets. I want to do Farscape with you.
Okay.
I think you would have a lot of fun doing Farscape.
I've never watched it, so that works.
But in any case, that's not an announcement. That's not a decision.
Yeah. Yet.
We do appreciate every rating and review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Even more, we appreciate you just telling people directly, like friends do, like a community. It's great. It's the best. This show is supported along with all of our other projects together on Patreon. That's patreon.com/chipandIronicus. And once again, we are now this is going up Monday. Yes, 4 videos into our latest Let's Play of Kingdom Hearts Final Mix.
Oh, there you go. Okay. I got to go down that road someday. I started Kingdom Hearts 1 right before the last channel ended, so some say there's a curse to starting a Kingdom Hearts LP.
Yeah, we've had people telling us about your experience.
It is in fact a curse.
That's the third blinking radioactive button. Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah. No, one day I'll figure out what a getting Norded means, but that day is not today. That being said, though, you guys, they're gonna deflect it, but I want to say to you guys again, properly on mic, honor to record with 2 heads on the Mount Rushmore of Let's Plays.
Thank you.
You guys are up there with as the reluctant granddaddies, but you're still very important to what they are. So, cheers.
Well, with kids like these. No, thank you very much. This has been a joy. This has been, I feel like, a long time coming. This has been a decade in coming. It just took a project that seemed like the right time for one of us to reach out to the other, and I'm glad it was this project because this has been a fantastic time.
Yeah.
Right on. Oh, I gotta just know right in the closing seconds, because I'm sure you guys must have touched it, but I didn't. No, I don't. What's your favorite stand? Real quick.
Oh shit!
Oh, by what metric? Oh my gosh! There's
tough.
so many.
Like 6 parts. We ended all 1 to 6. Just real quick. What's your favorite stand?
See, the thing is, this is the sort of question, like, that like Billy Eichner clip where he's just like, name a woman, and you can't do it. Like,
is it okay? Is it a punch?
I'm caught by the choice paralysis. That is as soon as I name one that it's one of my favorites. Tomorrow, when I'm editing this, like, oh, I can think of 3 more that I like better than that.
Wow, that's crazy. I thought you would have like had one of those sitting as a thing, huh?
My favorite stand visually, to go back to the very start of this episode, is Hierophant Green as drawn in the OVA.
Ooh,
oh yeah,
I like that answer.
Moves so cool.
Hell yeah, that's a great answer. Absolutely.
Ability wise, I still just really like Jailhouse Lock.
Yes.
That is one of my, I don't know if it's the favorite, but it's one of my more favorite ones for sure.
Jailhouse Lock is a good one.
So creative on how you got to activate it.
I don't know if it's just because we've been talking about it all day, but the one that bubbles up, just like design and really cool scenes with it and creativity of use is stone free. I love stone free so much.
Yeah.
Spider-Manning it. Absolutely. For me, design and usage and name, and the fact that it's canonically called The Weakest Stand, Survivor is my favorite. I love it.
Yeah.
I love the way it works. I love that it's autonomous. I love that Dio thinks it's worthless. And I love that it turns real life into a fighting game. And the life bars are your muscles. And we really gotta fight right now.
Now that's an element to put into the new JoJo's game that really gets into how stand fights work.
Survivor. Absolutely.
HP muscles. Ooh. HP muscles is both a mechanic and a name waiting for an indie fighting game.
Yeah.
But I guess that is the end. As much as I want to thank Woolie again for joining us, I want to thank everyone listening for joining in that capacity. It's been a great ride with everybody. Keep an ear to the ground for our next evolution. Act 2, you might call it, whatever it turns out to be. And so I do have to make that happen in order that our sign-off is not a lie. So, to be continued.
See you later, folks.
Arrow. I mean, it's one thing to kind of walk through the steps of, you know, Sea Moon and what was going on there and stuff. And then it's another to hit this moment, the most debated, insane
I can only imagine
sequence in all of JoJo. And if you're calling me in, I'm honored, but I assume we're going to have to talk heavy theory because people are still trying to figure it out. So I have to assume that's going to be a little more high level, as you said, with the discussion.
Thanks for sticking around to the end. Your reward is one last plug. Don't forget, Sex Archie is coming back at you this Saturday, April 1st. Yes, really, I'm not kidding.